You are not ready to hear what this remarkable woman accomplished. Judith Love Cohen was born in 1933 in Brooklyn in New York. She was passionate about math from a young age, but becoming a scientist wasn't seen as a viable vocation for women back then. Judith wanted to study astronomy, but she'd never even heard of a female astronomer. And her guidance counsellor told her, "I think you ought to go to a nice finishing school and learn to be a lady." Thankfully, Judith ignored that advice and went on to study engineering and become an electrical engineer. As an electrical engineer working in the late 1950s and early 1960s, Judith was often the only woman in the room. In fact, only 0.05% of all engineers at that time were women. Even so, Judith's work turned out to be crucial to the success of the Apollo 13 mission. Judith worked on the lunar module's abort guidance system. It was essentially the backup plan for if the main computer failed while the astronauts were in space. Her work played a critical role in the safe return of the Apollo 13 astronauts after an oxygen tank exploded on their way to the moon. This explosion caused a serious loss of oxygen, electricity, and other vital resources, which forced the astronauts to abort the mission. They had to rely on the lunar module for survival and used it as a lifeboat to get back to Earth. But there's more. Judith had 4 children, including the computer scientist and engineer Neil Siegel and the actor and musician Jack Black. You may have heard of him. At the time of the first moon landings in July 1969, Judith was 8 months pregnant with her 4th child. One day when she was at work, her waters broke, and on her way out of the door she grabbed a printout of a problem she'd been working on, which she continued to work on whilst in labour. According to one of her sons, she phoned her boss later that day and told him that she'd solved the problem and, oh yes, the baby was born too. The child she gave birth to that day was none other than the future star Jack Black. But let me just say that again. This woman helped to save the Apollo 13 crew while in labour, working out complex math between contractions. You couldn't make this up. But apparently, saving astronauts wasn't enough for Judith Love Cohen. After she retired, Judith co-wrote and published a brilliant series of books called You Can Be a Woman, to inspire young girls to see themselves as scientists and engineers and astronauts. As Judith said herself, that such depictions of women in science were lacking when she was a child. Judith passed away in 2016 at the age of 82. Whether guiding astronauts home between contractions or encouraging young minds to reach for the stars, we should all celebrate the legacy of this trailblazing aerospace engineer and determined mother, Judith Love Cohen.